causes two things to happen. Easy grading for us, easy evaluation of at least a correct answer, and thoughtful work by the students, because they don't want to do this 3-4 times. So, the process we want them to use is to find that angle before they cut, before they draw, before they measure. We want them to know the correct angle. And then we want them to prove that the cone they have created has maximum volume. And you have some flexibility how you require students to do that. Like I said, the activities I'm sharing with you today, we want you to feel that they're flexible. We want you to feel that you can tweak them for students of lesser ability or students of greater ability. So if you would, in your packet, if you would look at the back side of the cover sheet, the back side of the yellow paper. The back side of that yellow cover sheet has a lot of information for you. It tells you the objectives that I'm after. It tells you ways to extend or to tweak this activity to make it your own. Evaluation and grading, I put my ideas there. You're welcome, of course, to make this easier or more complex for you. And then at the bottom of the page, for each of these activities, I'm going to refer to the enduring understandings from the MPACs. But I know you also want the answers, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time you assign a problem. You want to walk home with something that's ready to go. And you decide if you want a student to use the first derivative test, the second derivative test. But my earlier question, which I'll come back to right now, is the candidate work with a closed interval. Okay. So, do we have a closed interval for H? For the height of your cone, what would you say is the full disclosure here? I stole this from Pinterest, and I stole it a few years ago. You can get the next slide here. This is a fabulous activity. A lot of our students are really good at the analytic work, and they're really good at the theory and the equations, but visualizing as you can be, they struggle. And especially we're asking them to visualize cross sections that are squares, the bases are part of a parabola. It's very difficult to visualize. Typically, I grade this project on completion. Typically, the more cross sections they're willing to put on their paper, the more points I give them. A lot of my students are driven by points. Oh, we did extra for this? Yes. Can I make 50? Yes. But I would recommend that you use linear curves for beginners, and if you want to do an extra credit event, you can give them a sine graph or an exponential graph, or give them two non-linear curves to work with. I would recommend that they create these cross sections with cardstock, not paper, that lasts longer. At some point in your life, somebody has met you and said, "So, what do you do?" And I say, "Well, I'm a teacher." "Oh, good for you. We appreciate you, thank you so much." And then what's the next question?
What do you teach?
What do you teach? Well, I teach high school. Oh, God bless you, I could never teach high school. Well, what's the next question? What subject? Well, I teach math. Oh, I was terrible at math. I really struggled. I don't get math. And if you're talking to other math teachers, what's their next question?
What classes do you teach?
What classes do you teach? Of course, well, I teach AP Calculus. Really? Good for you. Yeah, and I'm going to the reading this spring. Oh my God, why would you do that? Right? So, yes, exactly. So my job today is to convince you that going to that reading is edifying, it is validating, it is exciting, and it is worthwhile. And I want to encourage you to apply. That's my goal for today. I want you to apply to be an AP reader. AP Statistics typically goes after us. The calendar for all of this is available on the College Board, And so maybe that's what's kind of held you back. You don't want to miss final exams, you can't miss the end of the year. Maybe your district won't allow you to go. While I get a handout ready, would you share with someone in your group what has kept you from applying to be a reader? Share with somebody.
I actually have applied. I found it really hard to take college professors for the technical school students. That's what I found.
I applied last year summer school. I was late for the invite.
It's interesting to me, if you keep reading down the center, that if they threw in a pie, even though we're adding up squares, we're adding up very, they like pie. We ignored it.
Volume?
Yes, volume must be a pie. We ignored it. We were told to just ignore it.
If they multiplied pi through their answer, were you expected to divide pi out or not? I'm just curious because
Even if they multiplied pi through, it was fine because we ignored it in the first place. It was just a constant. We ignored it. It's called banking a point, right? Right? It's called banking a point. They got the point for squaring that square.
and they don't care if it's top minus bottom or minus top when you square it because they'll turn out to be the same.
Correct, that's correct. But
I
let
don't
me
like
tell
it,
you,
but-
it brings me to a little L'Hopital's, let's just do a little L'Hopital's rule here. Let's find the limit as x goes to 0 of sine of x over x squared minus x. Let's just say. Would you share with a neighbor what you would expect your students to produce when they evaluated that limit? Share with a neighbor what you would expect to see on paper.
I'd probably expect to see that you got an return for that's why you're using L'Hopital.
And some sort of indication that you're gonna use it.
That
I
you
think you
didn't
need
just
the
use it.
LH or something on
Yeah.
there.
They could factor in x out of the bottom, be sine of x over x squared minus x.
That's what they do too.
A point
Point
on the test
some
for
place.
dropping your limits every single time.
What's your first expectation?
limit?
That
So
they-
when they
plug
that
it in,
they
it's
substitute
zero.
it in the-
Evidence that they substituted zero.
Right.
And what will
It's
they
0
get?
over 0.
0 over 0.
Showing a 0 over 0.
And then,
I make them write a new limit with low, because they have to write LHOP next to it.
I have them write LH, right
Yep.
above the equal sign.
LH, is that sufficient?
Yep.
Yep.
Or you have them write LHOP?
Just because they think LHOP is
LHOP.
fun. Yeah.
Would an L be okay?
Yep.
Something to indicate that they're doing L'Hopital.
Is that an indication of L'Hopital's rule? An L.
I've seen
What about
it.
an H?
I've seen H.
What about just an H?
Seen one.
Wow.
Is that acceptable?
That's college. A lot of textbooks use H.
Just an H? Do they have to circle it, or can it be an H anywhere on the paper?
Or can they just do it?
Or can they just,
Mine wouldn't even indicate it,
Forget
they
it.
would just
Yeah.
draw an arrow
Yeah.
and then
is
say
this
limit.
acceptable? A kid, I'm sorry, a kid does a little bit of mental math and says, oh, it's 0 over 0, that's L'Hopital's rule, I gotta press on. Is this acceptable?
And please don't just put equals. You should put the limit.
Well, put an equal. H.
Of,
man.
oh, jeez.
I kept
That happens.
Definition of derivative right there. Cosine of x over,
That's a nice one.
do you need the equal sign?
We like it.
Mhm.
Do you need it?
No, but we like it.
I don't need it. What if a student did that?
Oh,
That
yeah.
would change it very well.
If you
So,
didn't take off a
nothing.
point for pi, how would you take a point?
Let's try this. Here's a student sample. This student is called 2B1. Their response to part A is on the front, their response to part B and C is on the back, and what I would like you to do is score this.
For all three of them, or?
Let's just do 2B1. You've got the formal College Board rubric got some crazy notes that you've only seen for the first time today, and you didn't write them, I understand that. At this point, I would be talking to my neighbor if I had a question. If they cannot answer my question, we take our questions to the table leader, and we work our way up the hierarchy.
Oh, they didn't add them.
They didn't add them, but that's okay. I think that would be okay.
But
Unless they didn't show, they didn't imply they
They
had.
didn't indicate that they have to add them.
Yeah.
Right, so I would
So
say
they
that.
got one
I wouldn't
Yeah.
give answer point, I would give three.
They did throw unit squared in there just to keep us happy.
Which I'm still digesting what they wrote down here.
Awarding
So now we're
points,
doing
we're not
B.
taking away, we are awarding points.
3 for sure. Fourth one. Did they have any notes about if they forgot to add them or anything here?
Forgetting to put something in just means it's not there. Can you award the point for something that's not there?
So I would go +3, so this was +1.
Yeah.
Plus one and plus one, so I would say it's +3.
Thanks, man.
On the sum, yeah, they did do it, so. Ooh, this is just pretty.
We definitely didn't get the answer right.
We got squares.
That's what I know, right. Even though,
They tried to find it.
even though
That's what I would interpret.
Right.
But then I see a +2 above it.
And if they didn't have this part, I'd be sketchier, but I don't.
I think.
Now, the interesting thing is that you may not write on a student document. You may not make a single mark.
But I already did.
Yeah, I was gonna say all over.
When you talk to a neighbor, you can't use your pencil to point out something. You have to flip it over and maybe use the eraser. You cannot tally points on a student document. The student documents are as clean when you're done with them as they were when you were presented them. So, I use another sheet of paper and I write my numbers 330. That's how is where you put the blame. Oh, sorry, you didn't have this, and it says I have to give you a 110. And what this does, of course, is make sure everybody's AP test is graded, standardized and graded similarly, so that someone who earns a 4 in your classroom also gets a 4 in my classroom. That's the point of this. It is non-stop enjoyment. I won't say fun, but it is enjoyable.
How has it changed how you teach?
Well, I feel like I know the answers to the test now. I feel like I know. It has changed more the way I write assessments. My assessments are much more purposeful. They're much more looking for a specific piece of knowledge. The other thing too, I have learned to write my grading rubric before I even hand out the test. I'm looking for this, this, and this. Instead of getting their test and saying, wow, everybody's missing number 4, I better make that only worth 2 points. I have my rubric ready to go. And instead of, like I was saying before, instead of deducting points, my students now have to earn points. And then, but see, I did this, I've got all this over here. Oh, sorry, you only earned a point for this over here. It's much easier to defend their results when you have a rubric in your hand. But I will say, I think sticking to our more stringent grading standards in our classroom is helpful. You know now that they let some things go, like throwing in a random pie. What? No, -1. No, we're just gonna cover it up and keep going. We know that on some questions they're much more lenient, but they shouldn't know that. We know that sometimes when they forget 3 decimals, it's okay as long as they had 3 decimals earlier. We know that, but we should still continue to hold them to a pretty high standard in their work.
Have you found that since every teacher's personality is a little bit different, that when you have all these different graders that are in this same place, that maybe even your table partner might be more like, I know you have a rubric to stick to, but that was always my fear, I guess, is like
Right.
a little who depends on who gets this test, whether they might say, well, that's really,
And that's why the table leader.
okay, so it's good to know there's
That
checks and balances.
Yes, absolutely. The
Yeah.
table leader will read everybody's folders once, even if it's your 10th year. You're gonna get back checked. They're going to do a back reading on you. And you can say, and, oh, I love it when kids do this. Oh, I always make my students write that. But if it's not on the rubric, it doesn't help. And so there's that, like you say, standardized testing. If you make too many mistakes, they won't invite you back. If you don't work fast enough, you're less likely to get invited back. They keep track of how many tests you score, how many mistakes you make. They keep track of that. Yeah, they keep track of that. But you get better. The first couple days are slow, and when you first get a new question, you're always looking back, but just like grading your own tests in your classroom, you get better at it, and you remember things. It's just phenomenal. So here's how we spend our day. Reading, bubbling, counting, questioning each other. They give us 2 breaks a day to eat. Counting and adding them up and marking, and they give us lunch every day too. And asking questions and pointing, not writing on their test, you're pointing to their test, you're constantly walking forward and backward to get more tests. They feed us a lot. Counting, laughing, arguing, freezing, it's very cold in there. I learned that my first year, it was very cold in that convention center. Conferring, answering, writing, squinting. The people grading your students' tests are conscientious to a fault. And we literally will look, what do you think that is there? Is that a not equals, or is that just a mark? Oh, did they erase that? Do you think that's an erasure? And a lot of shuffling papers, a lot of stacking tests, but it is hilarious and exhausting and frustrating. It's valuable and confusing and interesting and gratifying. It's an amazing experience. It engages me. It validates my teaching. I can't recommend it enough. Plus, you get $1,600
Get back to your school. Which is okay.
when they ask. Don't put that in the video. But when,
They thought they were evolving.
which seems
almost.
like a bigger offense
Yeah.
than not
Oh,
writing.
yeah.
Totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, but I learned, and you will learn other things too at the reading. I learn now. My kids have to. Let's go to La Hop, right? I play that song. Let's go to La Hop, and now they know. They will never forget.
Yeah, but it was on the calculus one too.
Short
So I
answer
know, thank you.
questions.
Yeah,
They're short answer. What will you bring to the experience? How has your school embraced AP? How long have you been teaching? Standard questions like that. It can't be that difficult. So,
You have to have a resume to upload.
a resume.
one
That's where I got
of
stuck in the process. I'm like, I don't wanna write my real
Oh,
name.
no. You have a stellar resume.
You needed one of those 30 years.
I'm sure I do, I just haven't written it. It's all in here though.
Right.
I've been at my school for 15 years, I'm not going anywhere.
If I didn't mention, they feed us. They feed us. And there is always candy at the table. So on your way out, there's candy in there, and whatever's left, I'm giving back to my students. So grab a Reese's or a Smarties, take a handful back to the kiddos at home. Thank you so much for being interested in this.
Thank you
and
for presenting.
Look forward to sitting with you guys at lunch.